Do you see that we're broadcasting?
Yeah, and people are also joining.
They are, okay. I can't see that at all.
Yeah, that's the same.
Anyone else see anything?
No?
Yeah, if you click participants at the bottom and
Oh,
then
yeah.
Oh, yeah, 52. That's true.
All right. So we'll open up the Q&A, right? I don't know if they can hear us.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, that's good. They're joining.
all right, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in, I guess, or good evening, since it's virtual, or afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. Thanks for joining the town hall meeting. Let me share my screen with you. All right. Can you see my screen? Great, awesome. So good morning, welcome to Town Hall. I'm Paige Radiguero, and I'm just gonna talk a little bit about how we're gonna do Town Hall, just because it's a little different today, being virtual. So we are going to first hear from ACM SIGSOFT, talk to ICSE, TSE, TCSE, and then ICSE, or ICSE Steering Committee. And this is just a brief agenda, like I just said. We're also going to hear about diversity and inclusion updates from Brian, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the town hall. And so how this is going to work today is we are going to use the question and answer app within the Zoom application. And so this is what it looks like on your Zoom window. It's at the bottom. If you don't see it currently, you can click it to open it up. And you can ask questions at any time in the bottom text box, and then you can upvote questions. And so the questions that are upvoted will be the ones that are asked first. We also have some questions that were sent in earlier, and we will ask those to start, and then go into these questions that are asked by you all. So that's how we're going to run today's Zoom. And if you have any questions about how this is also working, feel free to ask in there, and we can address that. To start, we're going to start with Tom. So Tom is going to join in and share his screen and talk about ACM SIGSOFT.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a few updates about ACM SIGSOFT. I first want to give a very quick overview of what ACM SIGSOFT is about. It's the ACM Special Interest Group on software engineering, and basically its goal is to improve our ability to engineer software, and it does this through various ways, like basically to encourage interaction between practitioners, researchers, and other people. And currently we have around 1,800 active members, and there are also various ways that SIGSOFT can help you. Like one way it does is, for example, through conferences like this, which are usually taking place in person, but there's also like a lot of interest in doing such conferences now virtually. We also do like webinars. We provide financial support for strategic projects and also for students to attend conferences. There are many ways for you to participate in SIGSOFT. So we have several SIGSOFT initiatives on various topics. So you can join one of these, or you can propose a completely new SIGSOFT initiatives. You can give tech talks, webinars. You can submit special projects for SIGSOFT, or you can write for software engineering notes, or you can also nominate people for awards. So if you're interested in participating in SIGSOFT, just send me or an email after the town hall, and we can find ways for you to participate. So I have a few very quick announcements, and then I'm gonna hand over to Ladan. So first, we have this newsletter for software engineering notes. So the software engineering notes used to be like a printed newsletter, but we switched now to online only format. So if you want to be notified about new issues of the newsletter, please go to this URL and sign up for alerts for this newsletter. The other announcement is Daniel Krasiotin, and the Open Science Initiative by ICSE, they just finished a draft of the SIGSOFT Open Science policies. So you can see the policies live at the URL on the slide. And we're also going to share the slides after the meeting, so you don't need to write it down now. But basically, like, this is a call for feedback. So please take a look at the policies and provide feedback so that we can improve them before they go live. The other thing that ACM SIGSOFT is doing is recognizing community members with awards. And the nomination deadline is every year on December 15. So if you want to start thinking about qualified people now, I think that's a great idea. And then you can have your nomination ready by December. So you can nominate at any time, you don't have to wait till December. But it's also, I'm very happy to announce the 2020 award winners. So one of the awards is the Outstanding Researcher Awards, which goes to Michael Ernst for contributions to programmer productivity through software analysis, testing, and verification. And Michael will actually give an invited talk in the ICSE award session on Friday at which starts at Friday midnight UTC time. The other award goes to, the Distinguished Service Award goes to Nino Medirovic for significant service to the software engineering community and for leading important community innovations. The Influential Educator Award goes to Greg Wilson for lifelong contributions to software engineering education throughout the computing industry. And Greg actually will have some reflections on education in the software engineering notes in the upcoming issue in July. Then we have an Early Career Researcher Award, which goes to Claire Luguez for groundbreaking work on automated program repair, impact on industrial practice, and service to the software engineering research community. We also recognize outstanding dissertations. And this year, the award goes to Rachel Zverev-Brill for comprehension and evolution of combinatorial models and test plans. And we recognize every year one impact paper, which is basically a very influential paper from 10 or more years ago. And this year, the award goes to Willem Visser, Klaus Havelund, Jerome Pratt, and Jeon-Young Park for model checking programs, which was published in the ASE 2000 conference. And they will actually give an invited talk at the ICSE conference, which will also be virtual in November. And so these are all the updates I had. And next, Ladan will tell you a few things about IEEE TCSE.
Do you have my screen? Okay. Greetings to all the over 100 participants for this town hall meeting, what I can see. This is Untitled from University of Waterloo, and I am the new elected chair of IEEE TCSE. First of all, I would like to say that I'm humbled to have been trusted with this role, and my goal is to build on all the outstanding work done by my predecessor in helping to lead TCSE to even greater and more ambitious goals. I would like to first encourage all of you to check the new TCSE website and explore all about our memberships and activities, and be welcome to get in touch. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you with my new role. First of all, I would like to acknowledge all the work and the dedication our past TCSE chair did, Rick Kaisman. I'm not sure that he was able to join us. Probably he's still sleeping because it's 3:30 in Hawaii time. But I would like, on behalf of the software engineering community, express our sincere appreciation to him for the 4 years of outstanding leadership, strong support, and all the excellent contributions he has done to TCSE. For those of you who are a little bit new to TCSE, I would like to say a few words. IEEE Technical Council on Software Engineering is the voice of software engineering within IEEE and computer society, and it has been working with professional societies, government, academia, industry to create resources and opportunity to educate and inspire software engineers. And we have over 1,950 active members. TCSE has a history to help financially and technically support the conferences and sponsoring publications that has the opportunity to advance research and aid practitioners, and providing opportunity for training, especially through e-learning. But the question is how you can participate in TCSE. First of all, I would like to encourage all the CS, Computer Society members, to apply to be a member of TCSE, which is a free membership. You can nominate someone for an award. You can do lots of volunteer opportunities that we have in TCSE. And actually the next election will happen soon in fall, and you can propose the TCSE initiatives. And I would like to welcome everybody to in touch with me, send an email offline to see how we can work together more to create more opportunities. Now, the same as ACM SIGSOFT, CSTCSE is also recognizing the member of the communities. And I would like to announce these names. But before that, I would like to acknowledge all the efforts that the Vice Co-Chair Awards did for the 2020 recognition. One, the Nancy and Philip worked very hard. For sure, it was not my term of the chair. It was done with Rick. And then there were 5 different subcommittees, and I would like to acknowledge their effort: Carl, Julia, Grace, Jenny, and Carol. And they come up with the list of the people who have been recognized. The first one was the Distinguished Synergy Award that was given to Peking University Software Engineering Institutes for recognizing its high practice impact research and their outstanding model in software engineering community through effective partnership between industry and university. The second is given to Tom and Ahmad. This is actually a new award that has been established this year for the new directions. And both of these outstanding members from our community, they did a significant contribution on establishing SMR in early 2000, and they tried to even create a highly successful conference series over the past years. Congratulations to both of them, especially Tom, you're here. I don't know if Ahmad is and people or not, but congratulations to both of you. Now we have the WISE Leadership Award. This year it was recognized Jo Atlee from University of Waterloo for her significant contribution even as a person to lead the software engineering education in the university and being the director of the Women in Computer Science at the University of Waterloo and promoting diversity and increasing the number of the women and all the underrepresented groups in software engineering and computer science. Our Distinguished Service Award given to Tao Ji for his significant service to software engineering community in many roles, and especially his recent research engineering research community in China. Last but not the least, we have another category of award, which is again new for this year. It's under the title of Rising Star Award, and it was given to Mike for his outstanding research record and his contribution, important contribution on mutation testing, which was done through fruitful collaboration with different companies in various size and even within the diverse application domains. This is all from my side, and I'll pass it to Lori to continue.
All right, so I'm Lori Williams, and I'm pleased to be the ICSE Steering Committee Chair, and I'll give you some updates about ICSE coming from the Steering Committee. A couple of things to start out with that I wanted to let the community know is that we did start very recently a new committee that is really trying to unite the mission and the vision of ICSE, FSE, and ASE so that we come together with a lot of our strategies. And so this new committee will have the 3 steering committee chairs of the 3 conferences, 2 additional volunteers from each conference, the ACM chair and the past chair, the IEEE chair and the past chair, so Ladin and Tom and their past chairs. And so we'll come together. There's a lot of big issues that cross all of the conferences. Some of them we'll talk about today, and then we'll come together as a united strategy. Another thing I wanted to share with the community is that we heard the voices telling us that we really needed to get more industry involvement in ICSE, and really to be able to serve the industrial community, industrial and government community. And so one thing that we did was we added the industrial co-program chair from each software engineering and practice track to the steering committee, and that goes similar to the regular research program chair involvement from ICSE -3 to ICSE +3, so that's like ICSE 2018 to ICSE 2023 now. They're on our steering committee, and so it'll be great for us to hear the voice of industry as we're making decisions for ICSE. So I'm going to talk about 3 initiatives that we're working on within the steering committee. One is sustainability, and on the left there are the names of people who are in our steering committee that are working on the sustainability task force. And so some of those, like Sylvia and Elizabeth, they are ACM and IEEE members. ACM and IEEE are very involved with sustainability as well. What are the icons on the screen here are items from the United Nations Sustainability Goals. And so that was one of the starting points of the task force, was to look at what the United Nations had said. They picked a subset of those, which would be the ones that were really relevant for the ICSE conference. And then the ones that are in red are the ones that especially we're focused on. So responsible consumption and production and climate action. And thinking about what can ICSE do to support these goals and the world. And so just some highlights. I mean, you know, we're giving a very short overview of these task forces. One of the things about having this virtual conference and maybe going forward having a hybrid conference is there's a carbon footprint benefit. So we're not all on planes and getting to hotels. So, you know, the environment is benefiting from that. So some other highlights that they're suggesting that every conference going forward, every ICSE going forward has a new role, which is a sustainability chair that would be working with the general chair, focusing on sustainability issues, and collaborating with IEEE, ACM, like all, you know, the professional societies to implement a conference green badge. So if the conference picks the right strategies, they can actually have a green badge. And then just some highlights, as far as the sustainability strategy, there's a number of things that this committee has looked at related to travel, hotel, food, events, materials, things that we would be working with the hotels with to make sure that it met the sustainability strategy. So that's one item that we'll be working with. Another one is open access. And so there's been a lot of call from the community to have our papers be open. And you may or may not know, but right now the ICSE proceedings are published alternatively 1 year by ACM, 1 year by ICSE. Recently, ACM announced a full open access strategy over the next 5 years. And what is involved with this open access strategy is universities agreeing to to agreements, published agreements. So the universities are actually working with ACM and providing payment to ACM, which enables the open access. At this point, still working with ICSE. And just so you know that the steering committee and there's 4 names at the bottom are people who are on our steering committee that are especially working for this open access, and will continue to do so as we go forward. Finally, something that we're working on that is rolling deadlines. And so I'm not sure how much you are familiar with some other communities, particularly the database community and the security community, and what they have gone to is a model where there's not just one deadline a year for their major conferences. And so we established a task force for this as well. Max DePenta is the chair of that. We have a thing called the Technical Research Review Committee, which is made up of 1 program chair of each year. And Alex Orso was especially passionate, so he joined the committee as well. And so what these folks have been doing is looking at the database community, the security community, and trying to extract the best of and the experiences. So some of them, as I mentioned, like there's a bunch of different models in the database and security community as far as the deadlines, frequency of deadlines, and how do they handle their program committee. And so there's a lot of research being done at the successes and the challenges from those communities. Some things that really have been looked at, sustainability of the model in terms of the PC and the PC chair effort. It's a very different model to be on a program committee or to be a program committee chair when there are multiple deadlines, 4 deadlines a year. So rather than have a very focused, intense effort at one time, that means that the program chairs and the committees are working for a whole year, and often actually typically another 3 months after the year assignment is over. If you're not familiar with this type of rolling model, what happens is if you submit for one of the earlier deadlines, the program committee can give you feedback that it's essentially like a journal that says major revision required. And so then you can revise your paper and submit to the next deadline. And it's likely that the same program committee members would review your revision. And so that means, the commitment is really for a year and then potentially another 3 months after that. So what is that like from a program chair, program committee standpoint? And trying to get perceptions from the research community, relationship with other conferences. And I mentioned the ACM, the ICSE, FSE, ASE, because this is not a decision we can make alone. We need to make it either decide to disagree or decide to go forward together. The security community, 3 of their major conferences all went to this type of model in some shape or form. And also thinking about how we transition. One of the, some of the feedback that we've gotten so far is that the PC and PC chair effort is potentially a little bit less intense, but over a longer period of time. And that the community does feel like the papers are probably of higher quality because there is the ability to revise in between. What you'll be seeing, and I'll talk about this community survey in a little bit, but we are going to have a community survey, and I hope that when you get it, you'll answer it. It'll be coming out, in the next 3, 4, or 5 months. And one of the questions on the survey, or a set of the questions on the survey, will be asking you, how do you feel about this rolling deadline? And how would you feel about being on a program committee if your commitment was for a year? Just so other things that are on our radar screen. One is Journal First. Journal First at ICSE is a very popular program. And we have not yet extended to more journals because we are trying to figure out how to handle the demand. Lots of conferences have Journal First, but everyone tends towards wanting to actually present at ICSE. And so we need to decide about our strategies and our policies around that, as well as working with ASE and FSC about it. And then also I mentioned the community survey, and so that's something that we're working on that will get out. And when you get it, I hope that you answer it. So that's all I have, highlights from the ICSE Steering Committee, and happy to answer questions. But for now, I'll turn it over to Byron.
All right, thank you, Lori. I'm here today to talk about the SIGSOFT initiative on equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm Byron Williams from the University of Florida. I'm one of 3 co-chairs who have been working on this initiative for about a year now. We meet virtually to discuss ideas. We've established subcommittees for the different tasks that we deemed important. And so I'll talk to you about all those different things today. So here are my co-chairs, whom many of you, of course, know. Congrats to Jo and her recent TCSE award, professor at the University of Waterloo, Kelly, senior lecturer at the University of Auckland, and again, I'm an associate professor at the University of Florida. And so we started with this mandate. And so I'm really happy that Tom decided to set up co-chairs for this particular initiative, because it does take a broad set of ideas, wide-ranging perspectives, et cetera. And so the idea here is that this particular committee is going to lead the efforts on diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And so when I think about those 3 terms, there's basically one way that I heard it described is, diversity is a fact, inclusion is a behavior, but belonging is the emotional outcome. And so we know that there are lots of diversity facts within our group in terms of geographic diversity, et cetera. Inclusion is, thinking about the behaviors that we do as a community to make sure that everyone feels inclusive and feels this sense of belonging, which is, again, that emotional outcome that we want to stir in all of our membership. And I think SIGSOFT has a, firm and solid foundation in terms of these things. And we really are just trying to accelerate or advance the culture of EDI and SIGSOFT. And so our mandate includes basically thinking about how do we measure progress, what is progress, where are we now, so where do we start, and then how do we get to where we really want to go. Think about, conferences and events, and how do we ensure that the conferences and events that SIGSOFT prioritizes and puts on, that these EDI initiatives and principles are there. And of course, thinking about ways of sharing best practices and also different things that we can do at those conferences to create this warm and welcoming atmosphere. And so the objective of this talk is really to share what we've been doing to support this mandate and to accomplish this idea and goal of inclusive, welcoming, and safe environment at SIGSOFT. And so we started, of course, by drawing on our own experiences, with EDI and other initiatives. We then said, hey, let's take a look at the broader ACM and seeing, what we're doing as a global organization as it pertains to EDI and what other events, et cetera, are going on. I've participated in TAPIA several times, and my co-chairs have experiences with various broader ACM type events. And so again, we wanted to study to see what ACM is doing and see how we could leverage those events at a larger scale. But then not only that, we began to look at the other SIG groups and communities and to examine the different types of efforts that they were putting on for EDI. The CHI community has the SIG CHI for All, their hashtag and initiative to support equity, diversity, and inclusion. And recently they put out a survey. And so I'll talk about a survey that we put together and how we borrowed from some of the questions and concepts that the CHI community put forth. Another really big initiative that several of the SIGs have adopted is the SIG Cares initiative. And so the idea with SIG Cares is that it's a committee to aid reporting on discrimination and harassment policy violations. And the goal there is not necessarily to, point people out or call them out for certain violations, but the idea is that we want to really make sure that our senior membership is involved in, hearing about these violations and thinking about ways that we can address them in a warm and, of course, welcoming way to make sure that, of course, everybody is welcome within the community, and then we can eliminate certain biases and insensitivities as it pertains to EDI. And so our initial targets for our efforts was really thinking about 3 different types of documentation to really, provide a foundation for EDI moving forward within SIGSOFT. Joe was responsible and set up a subcommittee for the SIGSOFT Code of Conduct and associated documents. Kelly wanted to develop guidelines for EDI conferences in terms of events that could be supported at our various conferences, as well as thinking about accessibility and how do we ensure or support accessibility for our presentations, as well as the actual documents that are submitted, the manuscripts that are submitted for the conferences. And I led a committee on developing a climate survey so that we can understand basically, where we stand as an organization and then how we can improve moving forward. So the Code of Conduct, again, led by Joe and her subcommittee, they developed several documents. We know that ICSE, has a Code of Conduct posted on their website. We did read about the SIG Cares initiative, and when we developed the guidelines for the Code of Conduct response team, we're trying to incorporate some of those principles or points from the SIG Cares initiative into the response team that we're encouraging or strongly recommending that each conference has this response team to kind of act on reported violations. We developed guidelines for session chairs, guidelines for review chairs, and again, all focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and making sure that we can support belonging to these various events that we put on. So just a real quick excerpt from one of our documents that Joe created. Again, this could be used as a template for any conference that's SIGSOFT is sponsoring. And so we can see, the primary goal of the conference. We can see what the expected behavior is for participants. And so all those things are clear in writing, and we can always refer to those on the conference website as well as the SIGSOFT website once these documents have been approved. But the goal is to say, hey, we expect all participants to behave professionally, to help create a safe and welcoming environment, to exercise consideration and respect, to be mindful of cultural differences, to refrain from demeaning or discriminatory behavior, and of course, to discuss and critique ideas and not people. And so again, I think we have a culture where these things are going forth and being put forth, and people are respecting this idea of the Code of Conduct and our, basically how we codify our expectations for these conferences. And so, these documents again just help to solidify, and codify what these expectations are for ICSE or whatever conference that our SIGSOFT or event that SIGSOFT is sponsoring. So EDI conference guidelines, Kelly and her team they wanted to provide advice to conference organizers on promoting and improving EDI events. And so these include maybe even having an EDI role or EDI leadership within the conference planning, steering, and or program committees, thinking about various event ideas and really focusing on accessibility. How do we widen participation? They also develop a guide for accessible submissions and presentations. And so again, this is advice to authors on creating submissions and presentations that are accessible to people with disabilities. And so I do have a few excerpts from those documents. And focusing on accessibility, what does that mean? Well, there's lots of resources that are out there with SIG Access in terms of if you're going to, write a manuscript in Microsoft Word or LaTeX, how you can actually produce the PDFs in an accessible fashion. How do you, develop figures for your presentations, etc. And so again, having this posted on the website and on the call for papers page, will, of course, help our presenters as well as authors as they write their papers to really think about and consider accessibility. They also have a huge list of various events that were drawn from prior conferences and other ideas that the committee came up with. And you can see a couple of those events that are listed there, one from ICSE, one from ASE 2019. And so, when we focus on belonging, these events, of course, can help. For example, the first one, the idea is to help new conference attendees or new participants to the community to feel welcome. And so thinking about ways that we can do that and trying to codify that in a set of policies. I was responsible for creating the initial climate survey, and you see the objectives of the survey. Number one is really thinking about and understanding the demographics of SIGSOFT members. Of course, we have a wide range of demographics in terms of our membership. And so really trying to understand and see exactly what that is and kind of how we can address the different communities within SIGSOFT. What are the current perceptions and experiences of our members with respect to diversity and inclusion? Again, I think we're starting on a firm foundation, but we really want to see, where we can improve. Are there any challenges that we have as an organization? And then also to solicit input on how we can move the organization forward. And so, of course, I'm sure many of you and lots of others have, great ideas to support EDI efforts within SIGSOFT, and we want to try to capture that information as well. So this survey that has been developed is going to be incorporated as part of a larger community survey. And you can see the community survey joint task force members listed there. So a couple excerpts here. Again, demographic questions, very common. Age, your gender identity, and how you describe your gender identity. Of course, all of these questions you can either prefer not to answer or specify, what the answer is. Which categories describes you in terms of your race and ethnicity, where do you live, geography, whether or not you have a disability, are you a parent, how do you describe your religion or spiritual practice, sexual identity, etc. And so again, demographics, collecting info about our membership so that we can serve our entire community. We also have questions that try to rate, how we feel about EDI within SIGSOFT. And so, thinking about ways of assessing that within a survey. There's several statements, as you see here, to basically assess, feelings of belonging and inclusion within SIGSOFT. So, for example, my interactions at SIGSOFT events help me to feel like a welcome, valued member of the community. SIGSOFT leadership really cares about my well-being as a contributor, researcher, and member. And so, again, the goal is to really assess the current climate of EDI and belonging at SIGSOFT. But then we also want to provide a space for short answer where we can get more insight into experiences that have been both positive as well as experiences that we can improve upon. And then also accepting recommendations for improvement to SIGSOFT EDI efforts. So all of these documents are under review by the SIGSOFT Extended Executive Committee. And so I think we submitted these documents sometime, maybe late May, early June. And so once the documents are approved, then of course we have to basically publish the document for wider review and consumption. And the idea is that we'd update the SIGSOFT website with our statements on EDI, as well as our code of conduct and all the other documents that were created. We're going to continue to review the SIG Cares initiative and how we can adopt and find leadership within SIGSOFT to serve on that particular committee. We wanted to set up or thought about setting up a SIGSOFT EDI email alias so that, of course, you can contact the chairs with ideas, etc. Have a SIGSOFT EDI mailing list where, if there are events or ideas or just information that you want to share that supports EDI or whether it's regionally or throughout the entire, SIGSOFT community, you can share at the mailing list. And then, of course, we're welcoming additional volunteers, broader feedback on the EDI documents once posted, any questions, concerns, comments, etc. We want to hear from you specifically about how we can improve equity, diversity, and inclusion at SIGSOFT. So that is it for me.
Thank you, Tom, Lori, Layden, and Brian. We are going to move into the question section of the town hall for ICSE, and I have been monitoring the Slack channels, and I don't think there are any questions, but please let me know if I missed something. We have some questions again that were sent in earlier, and we'll go through some of those, and then there's 3 questions currently on the Zoom chat that I will also ask. I don't think we have a particular Slack channel dedicated to this, from my understanding, so I've gone through all of them. But if there are questions posted in one of them that I missed, please let me know. I'm reading the chat currently. Yes, so we are going to start with some questions that were sent in the last few days that we will address first, and panelists, anyone can answer them, and let's just start. All right, so we are just going to start with 2 that we've kind of already addressed, just to get them out of the way to see if you wanted to add anything to them. The questions are, can we cluster more conferences to reduce our ecological footprint due to traveling? And then also, will software engineering conferences embrace hybrid model? I think more participants across the world will be able to join if it's hybrid. Laura, you already addressed this, but I didn't know if anyone wanted to add to any of this. So I'm just going to bring this up quickly.
I mean, I guess, what I would say to add, I know I addressed a lot of it already, is that I think that one of the gifts out of COVID is to, have us moving forward with a hybrid model as opposed to just an in-person model. That's my prediction. It's not me saying that will happen, but I think that that is likely what will happen. And that by doing that, we actually solve a number of problems that we had been speaking about as a steering committee even before COVID happened. And that is to broaden the community is one of our objectives. There was increasingly visa problems and the need to potentially have remote participation. That was already being spoken about. The sustainability task force was already in place before COVID. So a lot of the things that we had been speaking about, and the geography and our task force with ASCE, FSC, and ICSE, we'll be speaking about how do we geographically distribute, potentially more evenly distribute the time frame. So a lot of these things that were in place actually I think will address the items that the questioner had brought up.
Thanks, Lori.
Yeah, and I think if I want to add a few things. So I think what's going to happen is over time that we see more conferences also co-locating. And I think that, so it's not something we can do top down, but I think it's something which is going to happen bottom up. And to some extent, it's also what you're seeing at ICSE. Like you have like ICSE, you have like a lot of co-located events. So you had like multiple conferences, which used to be standalone conferences, which started co-locating with ICSE. And I think similar things will happen for our conferences as well. With respect to hybrid conferences, I think, I agree with Laurie that it's going to be one thing which is going to happen. But I think it's also, it offers its whole set of new challenges that you have to think about. Because right now everyone is kind of remote, so the playfield is the same for everyone. Like everyone has the same challenges to connect. But once you have like a hybrid setting, it's going to be new challenges in figuring out like how to connect remote attendees to physical attendees at the conferences and still maintaining like an inclusive environment which offers the same opportunities for everyone.
Thanks. I want to follow up on that. Another question that came in this last week was about moving to these virtual conferences. ICSE was able to reduce the registration fees and make the conference more accessible to students. Is it possible that we could drop some of the expenses and try and keep the conference accessible? Maybe a hybrid model would allow for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that the new conference rates make it more accessible, and every general chair is really scrutinized on their expenses and trying to keep the registration down. So I can't really say that when you come in person that I would predict that the rate will be any cheaper than it is now. I mean, there is always pressure on the general chairs to make the registration as low as possible. But if we do go forward with a hybrid model, then the ability to participate in a conference will be much more, much less expensive. I think that this is my prediction, again, just me as a person, not an authority, that this year, a lot of conferences, not just ICSE, but a lot of them are either free or very low because we're all shocked by what happened. And I don't think that it can stay that low forever. I think that, but it'll be much more reasonable, so where, I mean, I've enrolled for conferences for more than just ICSE, but others for $25, I would expect that it would go to like 100. I don't think it'll stay $25, just a prediction. But it just gives people the ability to be with a hybrid model to choose. Do I want to go in person or do I want to not go in, or can I only do it remotely? And, I was speaking with a student recently and he did share that, he was from Bangladesh, that before he came to the United States, I mean, he had good papers, but because he couldn't travel to a top conference, he couldn't publish there. And so, we're able to actually, and then his record didn't look as good as he wanted it to look. And so those are the types of things that we can solve by a hybrid model going forward.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to jump to the questions that have been asked on Zoom, and we can go back to some of the other questions if we have time. We're just going to start with one of the top ones. It seems we have a tie for voting, but the first one from Eric is, I like the idea of multiple deadlines, but I also know that there are concerns by other related conferences that this way ICSE might draw submissions from those other venues. Are there discussions with the steering committee also of ESEC, FSE, ASE, and ISTA?
Right, and I think all of the Zoom questions are towards me. And so, Eric, what I'd say about that is that, we do have this new task force or committee, and Tom Zimmerman's gonna give us a name for this committee. He's working on that. So we are absolutely, like a lot of so open access, journal first, rolling deadlines, sustainability, these are all things that we will speak with ICSE, FSE, and ASE. As far as like ISTA, then from there we could go on to an infinite list. ISTA, RE, I mean, you name it. And it's going to be hard enough. I mean, us having these 3 conferences, trying to come up with, a joint vision and or deciding to disagree and deciding to go our own way, but at least doing it with full disclosure and full conversation. So I understand what you're saying there, but I can only promise those 3 conferences will be in direct communication. If you're on the steering committee of ISTA or RE or someone else and you'd like to reach out and talk about it, that's fine. But like in the security community, it was IEEE Security and Privacy, Usenix, and CCS, ACM, CCS. You just can't keep going on and on. There's many other security conferences. But at some point you have to draw the line, but there's no reason we can't speak, but it is really those 3 conferences that will really be discussing the area, especially.
Following up on that, there was another question. What would be the difference between a conference and a journal?
Yeah, I mean, good question. And that's something that, we will also be speaking about. And we'll be communicating, even though, so the TOSM and the TSE, and, Tom is on this joint committee. He's the editor-in-chief of the empirical software engineering. So we will be including them and considering what is the impact and what's the impact on our Journal First program if we go into this model. So these are all things that we will absolutely be discussing.
Great. I have more questions for you, Lori. As you said, the Zoom is
Yeah.
mainly for you.
Right.
The next question is, if ICSE moves to multi-phase review with major revisions, how can we avoid the power imbalance where reviewers have too much power over authors, as seen in our journals?
Yeah, and I read that question, and I think that it is a case where no one wants power imbalances. And I'm sure that the editors-in-chiefs of the journals are trying to manage power imbalances. Just as a reminder that really, when you are the reviewer, you're giving up part of your life to give feedback to someone in the hopes of helping them. And that is probably what happens 98% of the time. And if there are challenges, then the challenges can be pursued with the editor-in-chief of a journal and or the program chairs. Like if you feel like in this rolling deadline process, there's some kind of power imbalance, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to the program chair to surface, like I have an issue here. You saw that we do have this community survey underway, the development of it, and you'll see, like I gave you some questions, Byron gave you some questions. It's going to be an extensive survey. Please take the time to answer it. And, Paul, if you have some specific suggestions that you would like to say, because, this is going to be a series of questions on the survey, please give us some constructive, suggestions of what you would do to manage that situation.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to a question about representation. So Basher asks, why not have representation chairs of SE and society too? SE has impact on society, not just industry.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Bashar. And so what we were trying to achieve with bringing the industry track chairs or the SEIP, one industry person from the SEIP track, was to have industry representation and to have a context around having that industry representation. So before, if we looked at the composition of the steering committee, it was primarily academic university researchers. And what we wanted to do, because there are lots of industry researchers that come to ICSE, to have them to have a voice. And so that this was a context, a systematic way to get industry researchers on the steering committee. So to say society, so if you look at the software engineering and society track, which is a very important track, I did actually a keynote at ICSE about that track last fall. So I agree it's an important track, but what we would say is ICSE doesn't have enough voice from society researchers. We need society researchers to be represented on the steering committee. And I don't know the context of that. Like, what does that mean? So what part of the software engineering society are we not serving? And I think that all of software engineering society track is represented by academic researchers and or industrial researchers now. So it's really by adding those track, the PC chairs from the software engineering and practice track, it was not to say we are picking a track as most important to include. It was really what's the way we can get industrial researchers on the steering committee.
Thank you. All right, Lori, one more question from Zoom, and then I'll give you a break.
I guess I could go on to the education one, right?
Okay, yeah, go for it.
I mean, I see it, so it does follow from that, because when I was reading Bashar's question, I thought, I bet someone's gonna ask that, and sure enough, they did. And it's similar that, we have, it's not about the tracks is really the point. It's not about representation of the track, it's the representation of the audience type. And so many, like that, the point of, we have many academic researchers who teach on the steering committee. And so I wouldn't say that I feel like there's a failing of the steering committee, that we have no one who talks about education. We are educators, most of us are educators. Okay, I hope that answers the question.
All right, last question, because one just actually came in a few minutes ago, I just saw. Thanks, this is great. We can imagine different versions of a hybrid model. In one extreme, we can imagine a hybrid model where the online or remote attendees are second class, while the other extreme is the one at which both remote and physical participants are equal and first class. They can interact and engage in the same way. They have similar opportunities as physical attendees in terms of engagement, interactions, participations, votes, etc. What kind of hybrid model would you plan or may be able to implement?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to monopolize, but I have been participating, with the ICSE transition, and, every Monday night for the last 2 months was on that. And I'll just say that even this time, we tried our best, even with very short notice, to have the ability for us to interact. And for sure, one of the big things about the hybrid model is we understand that as people are, PhD students, they need to interact. As they're getting started with their career, they need to interact. So there's nothing that can substitute person-to-person interaction, but then there is the next level where, what do we do in order to have this type of interaction? And there are things already in the program, like, there's Ask Me Anything tracks, which I'm a part of and a number of other people are a part of, and the ability to chat with other people in the lobby. And so all I could say, Puyan, is we are trying already to have models set up so that we can interact with each other as people, not just watch presentations, and that we would be moving that as much as we can forward to have this, as much as we can simulate this person-to-person interaction, which is really valuable on the part of conferences.
So I guess I might have lied. We have one more question that just came in, but I think it's important to address and we talk about. Adding to Puyang's question, what potential challenges can we expect the hybrid model of conferences will add to promoting diversity and inclusion?
It must be Byron.
Yeah.
Come on, Byron.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I mean, it's something I think we'd have to put some thought to. Of course, I think one aspect of a hybrid model is that we could include a larger audience, right? I mean, people from all over could attend and be a part of ICSE or whatever conference, but at the same time, there would also be challenges from maybe thinking about Puyan's questions to where we have first class attendees that are treated well and are able to interact because they're actually at the conference, and then other situations where that may, of course, not be the case. So I don't know. I think this is something we can certainly think about and kind of examine as we move forward. And so I'll be happy to do that as we consider these hybrid approaches and even evaluate. I mean, so of course we have ICSE online now, and as we move forward with this hybrid model, how do we evaluate, what is happening for maybe underrepresented groups, as well as, our mission and goal to support EDI. So I think it's something that we'll have to continue to consider as we move forward and how the hybrid model affects EDI going forward. So hope that answers, but yeah, it's certainly a challenge that we'll have to address.
And I would like to add just one more point with respect to the hybrid model. We know that even in the past, we had challenges with respect to visa for our graduate student to travel. And I think this is one of the primary factors that may affect the model that we want to define for these hybrid. And I'm hoping that things will move towards a more positive way that they can travel and there's no restriction for them. And then the thing is, because I'm trying to address some of the question that Puyan raised, defining these models requires several factors. And I think some of those factors right now are out of our control. And I think time teach us that what would be the best way to define this model.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask one more question. We're about to run out of time. Tom, this question is for you. Can ACM SIGSOFT reevaluate its policy on papers so that they're not originating from research groups to which organizing committee members belong. In this current era of double-blind submissions, there should be no cause for conflict of interest, and this policy places in a burden or cost on PhD students and postdocs from these research groups. Furthermore, this is maybe not an ACM level rule or policy by SIGSOFT not having a similar policy for conference organization.
Sure. So just to give some background on this policy. So the policy, if it is in place, it basically says that the program chair of the technical track and the general chair of the conference, that they cannot submit to any of the tracks that are taking place within the conference. So for example, the ICSE program chairs of the technical track, they cannot submit to the ICSE tool demo track or the ICSE industry track. And so, and one of the reasons this policy is in place is mainly to address the perception that there can be collusion among committee members. And so it's been in place for like a very long time. And so we're gonna reevaluate these policies over the next couple of months. But basically we, there's like this trade-off we have to make between basically making sure that it's perceived to be like a fair selection process of papers, and that people cannot question the selection process that has been made for papers.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
And it's not about that. It's about the rolling deadlines. And so one thing I want to say is don't think we are having rolling deadlines and we're just waiting for that to happen. We're talking about it. And so from the community survey, from the people working on it, the answer may be, let's keep it the way it is. So, you know, it's just, I wanted everyone to know that it's something that we're talking about. It is something that other people brought when the security community did it, like 18 months ago. People contacted the steering committee to say, well, we do that too. And so we're investigating it, is all I'll say.
Great, thank you so much. Well, time is about up, so thank you, Tom, Lori, Layden, and Brian. It's great to have you, and thank you for sharing and updating us with all this information. If anyone has questions, the Slack is open, but the Zoom, once we shut this, I think everything goes away, so we won't be able to follow up on any of that. And I think the sessions are about to start, so please go join some sessions. And thank you again for joining today.
All right. Thank you for keeping us in mind.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
And stay safe and healthy.
Yes, please stay safe.
Okay.
All right, see everyone later.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.